All right, we are live. What is good? This is Big Red in the morning. I'm your host, Big Red, aka Andy Malfran. We have a special guest. I know I've been doing a lot of music over here and stuff like that, but if you guys don't forget, I am into a lot of actually, you know what? This is a great place to start with my guest, Austin Wade Picard of the Underclass Podcast, already dead, and there's 8,000 other things you do. Just search his fucking name. He'll tell you something that will intrigue and scare the shit out of you. That's the Austin Wade Picard brand that I know. But no, it was funny. I was thinking about this where it's like just on the shorthand. I like you'll just be like, oh yeah, I'm really into like conspiracies and stuff like that. And it's like I get to a certain point where I go, like it's conspiracies in the sense that a lot of these are like, yeah, some people were God, my hair looks like this while I'm like talking like Charlie from the one fucking Always Sunny thing. I'm like, so here's the thing. Here's why people need to take me seriously, Austin.
Right. Pepe Sylvia, man. Pepe Sylvia.
Yeah, dude. No, but it's like they are technically like it is conspiracies in the fact that it's a lot of shit about people conspiring and stuff. But I feel like there's that negative connotation with it still with a lot of people where it's like, oh yeah, you're into that like weird goofy shit where you have all these theories, and it's like I don't know how many of them, like obviously there's a bunch that are either real out there or speculative. Like there's a bunch out there that you're like, yeah, that one's probably true, but we technically can't prove it. But it's like there's so many that are just proven true that you're like, oh, I'm like, oh, I think I'm just into what's it called? History? I think I'm just into history.
Exactly.
Because you're way deeper in it than I am, so all this shit's got to drive you much more crazy than it does me.
I do become frustrated over time, but I think it's mainly what was the term conspiracy theorist. I mean, it was legitimately manufactured by the CIA during the Warren Commission report, right? And as far as it was a strategic, basically a strategic tool for the agency to utilize in order to undermine the credibility of any dissenting voice who was questioning the outcome and the conclusions of the Warren Commission, which was, of course, providing us with the false narrative for the motive and the individuals responsible for the JFK assassination. So that the agency themselves created the term conspiracy theorist to utilize as a pejorative for that very purpose. And I think that when you begin to find out that this has been this sort of longstanding mind manipulation, right, sort of psychological engineering and conditioning of the general public into kind of like embracing this overall facade in a way, it's just like to me it always strikes as this sort of, it reveals itself as this, never-ending kayfabe where they have to I mean, honestly, it seems as if they need us to sort of engage at this level to where we are embracing this, once again, this constructed sort of naive veil of how we even interpret the power paradigm. And that is in order to, I think, obviously, deliberately deceive each and every one of us into falling into the preordained outcome, the dystopian traps that have been strategically laid throughout society, wherever you land on the political spectrum. And you will definitely see this sort of level of misinformation and these false narratives that I believe are strategically designed for providing us with these obvious, misconceptions to misdirect right our ability to even engage with reality itself. So it becomes like, how can you even objectively pursue the truth, right, if you're actually, unable to even acknowledge and identify the true power brokers? And you essentially, you're just kind of like under the impression that the political puppets who are truly just in charge of the PR and how it's presented to the public, as far as out in front of the true power brokers behind the scenes, the elite power cabal pulling the strings. I think that's the issue, right? And so yeah, I just, It's very frustrating to me because I essentially have just witnessed like this inability to kind of reflect, and I think it's this very childish, it's kind of like just psychological state of mind that the just sort of the average American possesses in this moment, and it leaves them very vulnerable. I think to many of these false narratives. So again, it's just after a certain point in time, you become aware of these like strange appeals to authority that
Hmm.
exist in order to kind of paint you into a corner to where you feel as if you have no other choice, right? And each 4 years, every 4 years, people become, you know, once again somehow they're just convinced once more that they can play a part in the sort of outcome itself that this totalitarian tiptoe that is very obviously, not being disrupted at any real level, no matter who you're allowed to vote for. And I think that that's very important as well because when I covered the Pilgrim Society and the Anglo-American establishment, like it really blew me away as far as how long-standing this has been, and like it was I believe it was hold on, let me pull up which it was the first lady of the Roosevelt, and I think it was FDR's wife, but I'm trying to remember now because this is like I think it's very important for people to be aware of the honestly, you have these individuals who have kind of attempted to blow the whistle in a way, right, while still kind of remaining insulated from any real accountability, but also trying to at least expose the reality of how power is structured and has been for quite some time. And so it's very obvious that the president is just, a sort of he's in no way in charge of real policy in my mind. I think he's just obviously the individual who wears the policies around his neck and will effectively take the fall and then also be rewarded by being sort of worshipped in the moments where you have the positive PR working at full steam. But it's still like it's just frustrating again because again like I came on I think last time we were talking about essentially questioning the concept of a serial killer like altogether, right? And
Yeah.
I think that at a certain point, right, it I kind of like conflated that with the urban myth of the snuff film as well, and how that was kind of strategically designed around the same time as the Satanic Panic, right?
Yeah.
This alleged moral hysteria, which is how they kind of, at the very least, explained away, right, real and legitimate, just proof and corroborated evidence of satanic ritual abuse that has taken place, like let's say the McMartin preschool, or the Finders cult,
Well,
or
that's a really funny that not funny. If you bring that up. So here's what's funny about that. No. But no, what's the fucking term? It's like don't believe it's like the thing from 1984 where they're basically like you see shit in front of you and then like people basically bullying you out of being like it was like the shit where you'd see some like drag queen story hour, you'd see some dude in like a thong dancing in front of a toddler and they're like this actually isn't weird. This is totally
right.
cool and not fucking weird. And it
Hmm.
is like that's a big thing I've seen people do in a lot not just that but in a lot of different areas like that where it is just like don't believe your eyes, this is actually fucking normal. And it's like it's on you to be that one person in the crowd of it. It's that fucking picture of the one guy while everyone's zig heiling. He's going like, nope, this guy's a jerk, you know,
Exactly.
because they
Exactly.
want you to be the person going like, well, I guess everyone else is doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's exactly what they're at least attempting to achieve, right? Is this sort of the collectivist trap? I think is a part of it, but it's again, it's like I always reference the book by Sebastian Junger, I believe, Tribe, where essentially it's just like this is sort of conditioned into human nature at a certain point, just from our past, kind of like in terms of just being a part of a tribe in the ancient past. Allegedly, the story goes right that essentially there's a psychological conceptual sort of conditioning construct that exists in our subconscious mind, where we're almost like naturally opposed to, just um, at least turning away from the group and
Yeah.
being ostracized, right? And essentially banished from the tribe for having a different opinion, let's say a dissenting opinion that doesn't line up with the rest of the individuals among the tribe. And so
Yeah.
therefore it was essentially a death sentence if you were banished from the tribe in ancient human civilization, obviously. And so I think the ultimate result of that was just this sort of subconscious level of animalistic conditioning at a certain point, to where we almost want to fall in line and become compliant because for fear of being ostracized and banished from the tribe. And it's really obviously presents itself in a much more ideological way, in modern day, than in that more kind of obviously, I think it was more of a physical, legitimate threat being posed at the time, obviously. But yeah, I think it's important to understand the level of just one, the powerful secret fraternal organizations, right, that have influenced the sort of structure of society itself, and how it has kind of really, I think, followed this totalitarian path, right? Which I believe is, again, it is it's by design, this dystopian structured
Yeah.
system that I think is intended to circumvent like nation states at a certain level, to where you won't have to be, let's say, um, just the plan will not be disrupted by a new world leader, a new dictator that comes into power in Venezuela, because you can just start bombing Venezuela and essentially perform a regime change operation without any approval from Congress, because you're utilizing this private sector plausible deniability construct with the NGO complex. And it's the same thing that happened with the president of Belarus during COVID, who comes out and he says, hey, he blows the whistle. The IMF and the World Bank are trying to bribe me $100 million to
Hmm.
impose these dystopian COVID measures and all of these restrictions upon my society, and I refuse. And now I'm blowing the whistle. And what happens directly after this? And consider the idea of the timing of it as well. And this is the lead up to the Ukrainian conflict. And essentially, Belarus is a border state of Ukraine. And what happens when the Belarusian president blows this whistle? Well, the NGO complex comes flooding over the border into Belarus from Ukraine and starts attempting to perform a violent regime change operation. It's like so crazy
When did that
on behalf
happen?
of the West. This happened right, so it's right as COVID was all the measures were being kind of internationally imposed, and
Really?
so yeah,
So
hundred
wait,
percent.
during in the middle of COVID, they were like, "Let's do a little regime." It's like 6 feet apart, but also we're gonna hit just a quick little regime change.
Right. It's just so
Crazy.
crazy that we have evidence of this. Yeah, Alexandra Lukashenko, right? Belarusian president. And yeah, he claims IMF offered and World Bank offered him 940 million. My bad. It's almost $1 billion. So
I'll say that. By the way, at least it was a lot. We
yeah.
were just talking about this on my comedy podcast, Panties in the Mouth, where you'll be like, yeah, so I looked the other way while this corporation put a bunch of fucking lead in the toys and made all your kids retarded, and you're like,
Right.
oh, how much did you make off that? And it'll be like $1 million, and you're like, that's such a small amount of money to ruin a generation of fucking children. It's like I actually respect them all. Like, you're like, yeah, at least they're giving him almost close to $1 billion to like
Right.
do all this shit.
It's so crazy
It's
though. This
yeah,
2020, right? That this is
yeah,
happening, and yeah, it was all allegedly because they wanted this COVID relief aid would be essentially the bribe package that he would have received, right? And it would have,
yeah,
which is hilarious, is that it wouldn't have actually financed the implementation of the COVID measures. It would just have been a facade in terms of the bribe itself coming in the form of the COVID relief aid package. But it was truly just a bribe directly sent to the Belarusian president. That was how it was actually, or at least that was
And I'm sorry,
allegedly what he claims.
what was the bribe for again? Because you were saying Belarus is right next to
Yeah.
Ukraine, so it was related to the Ukraine war and everything. What was the bribe
Well,
for exactly?
I think it was more related to the COVID measures being implemented in Belarus, and
Oh, okay.
because he was refusing to do so, they, due to the proximity of Ukraine, they already had these paramilitary organizations, obviously,
Mm.
in position to flood over the border as posing as NGOs, right, non-governmental organizations, when in reality that's just the private sector plausible deniability construct by the intelligence apparatus, to avoid any real accountability.
Yeah,
And
aren't
it's crazy.
NGOs like I first learned about how much NGOs like affect shit when
Mhm.
I think I was listening to, I want to say it was like Brett Weinstein talking about the border and how it's like people just look at the border as like, yeah, it's a bunch of people, a bunch of Mexicans flooding over the border. And it's like, no, dude, these NGOs set up like checkpoints to help like
Yeah.
Chinese nationals get in here.
Yeah.
And it was like, I was laughing too because I was like, well, Brett Weinstein's saying that, and he's not just like some dude fucking screaming. So I was like, damn, there must be something to this and stuff. But talk about that because like I never realized how much the NGOs. Didn't we see that with what was the group that Elon
USAID.
USAID. That was
Yeah.
the thing they were doing where it was like the NGOs are like we're giving money to these NGOs and you think it's so fucking Afghani girls can get shoes on their way to getting bombed to school. But in actuality, it's like, no, we're actually overthrowing government. So I'm really curious about that, like how the NGOs are involved in doing all this
Oh, yeah.
shit behind the scenes.
Yeah, USAID was also, I believe, not only that, but they were kind of involved with the cultural degradation of the social engineering, providing like transgender cartoons and things of that nature, and to Afghan citizens as well, which I thought was uh, par for the course, right? Like, I believe at this point, obviously, we're intended to embrace the idea at face value that serial killers just so happen to begin to sort of disappear off the map just around the same time that mass shooters began to surface, right, as a prominent phenomena. And I think that you know that's intended for us to sort of embrace this as some grand coincidence, but in my mind, there's no way that this is a part of some sort of like, in my mind, I believe that MK Ultra never ended. Obviously, was driven underground, and I think that much of the new if you realize the scientific nature of the New Age movement and how they would like us to be overly prescribed these essentially psychotropic drugs that will affect our psychological state, disrupt our neural pathways, enhance our emotional reaction to a point to where it's obviously, I think, it's a detriment, right, to our overall just emotional state of mind. And I think that's another aspect of kind of the demoralization campaign of the stages of ideological subversion, because again, it's like the goal is to keep you in this emotional state of mind and in a state of fear as well, because utilizing fear as a tool to manufacture consent has always been the name of the game, right? And I think that when you just witness this rise in creating these political incentives around these social agendas, right, where all of a sudden the trans movement and the LGBTQ spotlight was sort of strategically, I believe, kind of socially engineered at this very specific moment in time, and once again, utilizing Hollywood to kind of influence the minds of the general public as well into more embracing these inverted moral principles, right? As if they're and don't get me wrong. I think that there's a reason that that what was it? What was that Nazi scientist, or not a Nazi scientist, but the German scientist who essentially, when the Nazis took power, he had basically been the leading expert in the field of uh, gender care at the time, right? And
Yeah.
essentially the trans movement in the lead up to, it was during the Weimar Republic, right? In the lead up to the SS coming to power, and the Tool Society, and all of this was kind of like just again rising to power in the background in a sort of way. And what happened as soon as they took power is effectively they kind of like began to uh, at least isolate aspects of the culture that they believed was a strategic degradation attempt at degrading the German public in terms of accepting these ridiculous, unethical ideas. And obviously, I'm not sitting here acting as if uh, what replaced these unethical values was anything superior, obviously, because it didn't lead to to anything
Yeah.
positive in any real way. Clearly, I believe that was a manufactured crisis, understanding the financing of World War II. But still, if we're talking about NGOs, you see how, in the context of the Belarus story that I mentioned earlier, the president of Belarus said that the World Bank and IMF demanded, through this alleged $940 million bribe, that he should impose extreme lockdowns on his people, force them to wear face masks, impose very strict curfews, impose a police state, and essentially crash the economy. Right. So this was all a part of the apparent um, just conditions that were placed on this alleged bribe that he would receive. And so Alexandra Lukashenko allegedly refused this offer and stated that he could not accept such an offer and would put his people above the needs of the IMF and the World Bank. And so who knows?
Quick
I
quick question. So to be clear, it's not like it's an overt like here's $900 million, do this. That you said earlier they hide it as like aid funding, but in
yeah.
actuality they're just going to hold on to a lot of it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly what, at least according to the Belarusian president, he claims that yes, it would have been this bribe was offered to him in the form of, it would be received directly as COVID relief aid, but it was
Gotcha.
actually a bribe of $940 million directly to him personally. And so again, it's just like, doesn't that make much more sense as far as how what is it, the Confessions of an Economic Hitman, as far as how
Yeah.
it's described, right? I think it just, again, it's not at all something that should be surprising or should shock you at this point. Like I honestly believe that the Delphi method was designed for this specific purpose, and which is again an appeal to authority, right? The Delphi method is it
What
was so
the
it's
Delphi
designed.
I know what the oh, you were getting into it. Sorry.
Yeah, no, you're good, buddy. It's designed by the Rand Corporation of all companies, obviously, or organizations, and the Rand Corporation is just essentially just a privatized intelligence operation, a spook outlet that they had a prominent footprint in Laurel Canyon. By the way, which I thought was kind of interesting, and especially because all of the architects of like of the what was it called, a clean break, right? The call for a new Pearl Harbor that was issued by the conservative think tank project, a project for a new American century, and essentially it called for a new Pearl Harbor just before 9/11 occurred, right? And that was all a part of members of the Rand Corporation were directly involved. Brookings Institute, which clear if you when I covered Watergate, it was hilarious because Nixon was like suggesting they should bomb the Brookings Institute. I thought it was hilarious. Just like, my God, dude, the time, it's, I think, with just reality has been far stranger than fiction for longer than we're aware. And we have limited frame of reference due to our age, I think, as well. And just like we're all waking up like in the Big Lebowski, right? Like
Yeah.
when Walter tells Donnie, like, "You're like a child who wandered into the middle of a movie
Well,
theater."
dude, it's you gotta like you gotta. I realized I used to be overly critical of myself because I'd like find out about something and then I'd find out more and I'd realize I was like, oh, I only know the tip of the iceberg, and then you're like, oh, and then you talk to other people, dude. You just kind of realize like everyone's getting there when they get there. So like, don't be so fucking hard on yourself or whatever the fuck, or just or don't just don't spaz because it's like it's a lot. Everyone's getting there when they get there. But literally, I was talking to this one dude. I was going to the Creek in the Cave here in Austin to do a set, and I was like ripping a butt out front, just talking to this guy. This was when like the Epstein shit flared up again, and like I was commenting on, like, don't get me wrong, there's a million things that are bad, but you always try to find like the positives and shit. Where I go, like, when I first got into Epstein, dude, I remember hearing Tim Dillon bring it up on a podcast, and I was just like, what the fuck is this guy talking about? And now it's just like now if you just go to a regular person and go, do you think there's a bunch of pedophiles in the government? They go like, yeah, I'll take those odds. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, and I go, in a weird way, I go like, that's better. I don't know. Like,
I
at
know.
least the acknowledgement of it. But then I was talking to this one dude who, like, I'm literally talking to him, realizing I go, I think you found out about Epstein this week, man. That sucks. But like, and as I'm talking to the guy, he goes, but here's my question. He's like, why don't they interview any of the victims? And I go, oh, brother. I was like, you want to stay up all night. Fucking right. They go listen to this. They interview the victim. But that's what you realize, where you're just like, you just got to take it one day at a time, because it's like everyone's at different places and there's just so much of this fucking shit. But hey, I'm sorry. I feel like I got you off track, but it is just interesting. It's like interesting shit to reflect on, where you just kind of got to like keep trucking and moving forward, if I could use a corny phrase.
I think it's that is definitely a victory in my mind, as far as the level of kind of the concept of allowable opinion being moved in the proper direction. Now, I will say there's definitely there's a vital effort in place at this very moment where they're attempting to re-corral the general public into these kind of alternative. I believe there are assets in place in the alternative media landscape, which are very much kind of trying to deliberately redirect individuals who are fleeing from the dying last gasp of the mainstream media, right? And
dude, and that's where just being older helps. Like I saw with the fucking, like, with Trump talking about the flag burning stuff. I'm like, I'm 35. I go, we've talked about this already. Why are we still talking about flag burning? Or it was funny when I had Ken Silva on, I was saying how who is it? Sean Ryan. I think Sean Ryan's like a useful idiot, and
glows like the sun, though, dude.
Yeah,
My God.
Ken's like, no. He knows what he's fucking doing.
He does, in my mind.
But even if he let's glass half full, let's just say he's a useful idiot. Even there, he's like, yeah, so we got this guy on talking about Epstein and child sex rings and and then it's like, okay, so what's the solution? He's like, I'm just gonna say shit George W. Bush said in fucking the early 2000s, and you're like, we're doing this again. That's the thing with that's where age helps you, where you're just like, oh, you guys are running the play again. You know what I mean? They're just going, oh, just right up the middle. Tactics. Okay.
Yeah. Pattern recognition is a superpower, my friend. Like, that is what it feels like, right? Like and at this point, I'm just so grateful to be able to reflect on my ideas. I never attempt to act as if I'm certain and I understand the power structure perfectly to a point to where I have the answers. Absolutely not. I think if you're claiming that, be skeptical of any individual who claims to have the answers, right? Or even possess the solution, in my mind.
That gets my antennas straight up, because I just go like, I'm not a fucking genius or anything like that. And like, but I know enough to realize, like, if you're saying fucking the answers, I go, that's someone that's trying to fuck with you. It's like, no one does, because that shows me you're either lying or you don't actually know shit. Because
Mhm.
the one thing I've learned about learning more shit is at no point do you feel like you know more shit. You just realize the more you learn, the less you realize you know.
Exactly. That's
Yeah.
100% the case, and yeah, I just feel like, and even with just an individual case, like, it's fascinating to me how much I think I know about something, and then the further you dig, the more you realize there's another rabbit hole to dive down, and at the very least take seriously and put into context. And it's not always going to be convincing altogether, but at the same time, I think it's just the path, the objective path is what is most important.
Yeah.
Objectively pursuing the truth in a way to where you're attempting to, and we all have our bias that we are hoping to confirm in a way. And so be aware of that. It's like you have to be, because if you're claiming you have no confirmation bias, then again, you're probably deceiving yourself, right? And I think that
Yeah.
there's a level of that as well, where people would always love to be the ethical superior individual in the room. I get it,
You know what I
but
you know what I do with that one? I try to be hyper aware of if I become like a character or an arc. What would the term be? Archetype. Whenever you're just
yeah,
like,
basically.
whenever you're saying something and you realize you're like, oh, this is like a pre-established personality. I've accidentally stumbled in or something like that. I don't know if I'm
Oh yeah.
phrasing that properly, but you're just like you're saying something that you just know is like the predetermined, it's like a pre-established opinion, it's like a catchphrase
Exactly.
almost, and you like
Exactly.
just being aware of that and catching yourself on that is important.
Definitely. You're essentially, it's this I think it's a factor that at least the Hollywood cultural impact on the West, as far as just like, man, so many people, I think, without having these pop culture references, or like sort of worshiping these strange celebrity personalities, they take on this false. Everyone's kind of in the midst of an identity crisis, I think, at a certain level, and they've yet to kind of I think it's very important to discipline yourself enough to where, now I think you can become self-defeating, right, when you're just too self-critical, and right, and I think that,
Yeah.
yeah, there's a balance you have to try and find. But I just think that, one, they're hoping, at least I say they, which the proverbial they is obviously the in my mind, it is the permanent establishment, the elite cabal in place that is unaccountable, and no one voted for these people, and they're clearly financing the structure of modern governments, and it's just this how the state is structured in general. And
So can I ask you this? Because
Mhm.
I think people get to, when they're talking about this stuff, they spend like most of the time just worrying about like the bits and pieces, the day-to-day functioning, like what's happening on the day-to-day stuff.
Right.
And it's like I get, because I know you mentioned earlier like secret societies and stuff like that. So, and I think we all can feel like, I don't know if it's like I think we can all feel like it's not necessarily a puppet master, but it is a, I think it's like pieces on a, almost like they're playing Risk and they're like, we're gonna try to push it this way and see what happens and stuff like that. Do you do you get a sense of, like, first off, like, who are the bigger entities controlling it? And then like, is there an end game? Or is it just a thing of like, this is the thing we do, and it's like, it's almost like you get to the end of a season of a television show and you think
Mhm.
there's going to be some resolution, and then they have the cliffhanger for season 2. It just feels like we're going through a cycle where, a cycle of psychos, it feels like we're going through a cycle where they just keep doing shit, but then like something just changes course. So it's almost like the way we're cogs in the machines, like they almost feel like I don't know. I'm always just fascinated on like, what's the end game? Because
Right.
I always talked about it. I always talk about it on here where like, I'll admittedly I'm not deep into the whole like Satanist element, or like are there? I'm not like I just go based off shit I've seen where it almost makes more sense if like the people at up top believed in this like otherworldly being that they're like, oh, if we cause chaos on the world, it'll make him happy. I go, and it's like I don't want to think that, but that's like the one that makes the most sense because it's like, what else is the point of any of this shit?
Right.
You know what I mean? If you're not just like, I'm like, dude, like process of elimination. I hope there's fucking aliens feeding off of our souls. What's the fucking point of whatever you're like? Is it just so fucking BlackRock can get a bunch of fucking money, or Blackstone, or whichever group is all up there and shit? Like,
Right.
what do you think about that? I said a whole bunch of shit. But what do you think about that? Of like, what's the fucking end game for all the evil shit they're doing?
Yeah, I think that honestly, man, it's very difficult for I think any of us to kind of conceptualize in a perfect way, but I do think that we have enough examples that we can point to, and essentially like this is fascinating to me as far as how it's been described, and this is from Edith Kermit Roosevelt, right? That is the individual who this is from January 1962. All right, so consider this is just before the JFK assassination takes place, and and uh, and so and by the way, Edith Kermit Roosevelt, right? It's important to understand who she is, right? She's the first lady, who was the second wife of Theodore Roosevelt, right? And was first lady from 1901 to 1909. So this is right around the World War One. Considering obviously that Theodore Roosevelt and his relation to FDR, who then becomes obviously the first president to ever serve 3 terms, right? Which is just again, I always consider that in the context of it. I think that there's not enough support for Trump at this moment. I think like if they could have designed the assassination attempts to occur like strategically around the time of his lame duck session, maybe he would have gotten a second win to the point to where there would be enough political capital to imagine a precedent-setting operation to that level, to where you would have a third Trump administration, which would imagine that sort of environmental impact as far as just the cultural reaction on both sides of the political spectrum. It would
Yeah,
be like confirming the bias of every person on the left, right? And then it would
yeah,
also, and then it would also kind of just fall perfectly in line with one. I think they would. I'm always viewing it as like for example, when Biden was in his lame duck session, it was like, man, they're going to escalate in every single sense of the word, right? At every level for these geopolitical conflicts, and that's effectively what took place, right, during Biden's lame duck session, because they had no concern over harming his political capital and his ability to run in the future. That was not at all a concern, because they were already designing the strategy of replacing him with Kamala, right? Which is hilarious, because what did you just see happen when JD Vance comes out, when all this weird, strange, false narrative surrounding Trump's health just happened over the weekend? And basically, I thought it was so funny because you just like, again, it was like one of those moments that seems like it's kind of piercing through that veil to where it's like, where are we? This just
yeah,
doesn't even feel real, where Trump's being asked about, hey, how did you feel over the weekend when you found out you were dead? It's
yeah.
like giving a press conference. It just, to me, that's hilarious, because
He's also such a bullshitter where he's like, "Oh, I didn't see that." I go, "You know
all
what
right.
everyone says about you. Shut the fuck up."
Exactly. But still, I think it's hilarious, because didn't we not just see the weekend at Biden's play out, right? And now the
Yeah.
sort of
Well,
exact same narrative just was recycled in this strange way. But
yeah, there's so much of that's the one, and I don't know how much of it was like that back in the day because I've been, in modern my life now, I've been paying attention to politics the most I've ever paid attention to, and I'm now through, like we were saying before, I've now hit cycles where I'm like, oh, you're playing the same game, you're playing the same cards again, like we did that one already. And there's like so much of modern politics that just hopes you're like, hopefully they forget 6 months ago, or
Right.
hopefully they just forget the biggest story from a year ago. You're just
No,
like,
we pretty much do though, if you think about it. Like I mean, it as far as most stories, there are certain like, you know, just Epstein is the greatest example probably, but still, I think it's just there are certain stories that take root and are appealing to the vast majority. But also I find that very interesting because it seems like it's somewhat deliberate as far as the cultural, manipulation, the societal subversion involved. Because I'm always wondering, like, you know, to what level do they want us to focus on some of this as a distractionary measure? For the true overall agenda playing out on just before our very own eyes. I think the pivot to the totalitarian technocratic state is in the works in this very moment. I mean, that's why Peter Thiel and all of his acolytes are perfectly in place. You know, you see all of these dystopian AI models, and beyond that, it's I mean, legitimately, we're having the implementation of some of this AI threat detection software, like just the same day that the Minneapolis mass shooting happens. What happened then? You have an individual IDF, a former IDF agent. That's so crazy to me, that he took the opportunity to go on, and what was his name? And by the way, I just found out today the New York Post published an article about the Minneapolis shooter's girlfriend was a furry and she was ID'd. I thought it was so funny, honestly.
I
Like,
got.
look,
I mean, I gotta be honest. Any bad press that furries can get, I fully support.
right?
I can't stand them.
It's for real, but it is so funny. But and as far as the Gideon, right, this AI threat detection platform for law enforcement, which is straight up Minority Report style, pre-crime predictive
Yeah,
policing, it's financed by Palantir. I didn't know
yeah.
this instantly. I wasn't aware that it was financed by Palantir, but Aaron Cohen, a former Israeli Defense Forces Special Operations veteran,
Hell
he
yeah.
developed this AI-powered threat detection system called Gideon, designed to scan the open web for signs of radicalization and tactical planning. Cohen presents this technology modeled on Israel's counterterrorism approach to the White House, and this is a proposed partnership with the Trump administration to scale its use. So the system aims to assist law enforcement agencies in identifying potential threats before they materialize, and is being marketed to local police departments. Technology has received backing from Palantir and is also promoted as a tool to combat human trafficking. What? No
Mm,
way. Like, honestly, I just now realized that it was being promoted as a tool for that specific purpose. That's a red flag to me. Just knowing sort of the Laura Silsby playbook, right, where she gets caught trafficking children. So she's so Laura Silsby was a part of the Clinton Foundation, right?
okay.
And whenever the Haiti tragedy happened, essentially she's caught trafficking Haitian children across the Haitian border, right? And
You're talking about the earthquake in Haiti?
yeah, it was like
Okay. Oh,
I believe that's what it was, wasn't it? Or it was a natural disaster of some kind.
yeah.
It was major.
So you're saying when that happened, this lady, what's her name again?
Laura Silsby.
So she gets caught trafficking children in the midst of this when they're like doing
Yeah,
disaster relief and shit.
apprehended, legitimately in custody in Haiti, and Bill Clinton
Wow.
flies over to Haiti and specifically flies there physically and gets her out, brings her back to the US, and she's placed on the Amber Alert system.
Okay. That's
The
weird.
Amber Alert system which is just like the craziest thing of all time, because what is the Amber Alert system responsible for, right? It's
Yeah.
responsible for the
Oh,
kidnapped,
she
abducted children, right? And like,
so
basically,
she's placed on it to like work for the Amber
yeah,
Alert?
she's one of the key. So essentially, this is honestly, it's one of the craziest stories, and I remember covering it. I believe it was in my Pizzagate episode. I think that's when I covered it, because it just fits too perfect
Yeah.
as far as the. And so this is in May of 2009, right? When you have Bill Clinton named as the UN Special Envoy to Haiti.
Okay.
So he's assigned the task of coordinating the efforts of the disparate aid initiatives during the humanitarian response to the devastating effects in the 2010 Haiti earthquake. So March 28th, 2017, there's uh, basically a public acknowledgement in these in essentially Clinton Silsby trafficking scandal, and there's a media cover up that all seems to kind of align perfectly with the origin of Pizzagate in a certain way. And so basically, Silsby is arrested smuggling 33 children out of Haiti without documentation, and her sentence and charges were reduced after an intervention by Bill Clinton. And so, in the aftermath of Silsby's arrest, Jorge Puello was her retained lawyer. And he was arrested in connection with an international smuggling ring accused of trafficking women and minors from Central America and Haiti.
Mm.
That was her representation. Her legal representation was legitimately arrested in connection with this international smuggling operation. And so this news comes in November 2016 and was entirely ignored by the Western media. And essentially, Clinton-controlled publications were attacking it in the lead up to obviously they're running for president at the time, right? So in 2016, so you're talking about all this bad press is being it's surfacing, right?
Yeah.
And that makes sense. Same thing that happened when Sarah Palin was running as I think when she was running for VP at the time with McCain, right? And basically, what happened is Todd Palin was there was an investigation. It turns out that a madam he was connected to running a prostitution ring and an operation for sexual blackmail on politicians was directly connected to Todd Palin, who was just going to her apartment all the time. And so it turns out Todd Palin is legitimately connected to a human honey trap operation for sexual blackmail purposes for politicians. And this is all being exposed while Sarah Palin's running as for VP, and no one effectively well, the individual madam was suicided. So of course
Yeah.
there's no track record of this any longer, and this is all at the same time as like Deborah Jean Palfrey, right, and the Confessions of a DC Madam and all of this, but so Laura Silsby, right, Hillary Clinton intervened politically on her behalf, and Silsby, former director of the New Life Children's Refuge, all right, she apparently these emails from her organization were in the WikiLeaks, right, Hillary Clinton email archive discussing the NGO before her arrest. Now, Silsby's organization, which is, by the way, I found it insane that who's the woman who was what was her name? The woman who came out and was basically claiming that she was sexually abused by that individual who was running for the Supreme Court, Brett Kavanaugh. Um,
Oh, I
yeah, yeah,
remember her, but and
yeah,
yeah, her story was just she was like, I saw him at a party one time, I think, or something.
yeah, yeah.
It was like crazy how it was almost in line with the Gretchen Whitmore fake kidnapping plot.
Right,
When you found out, like when you even found out her version of it, you were like, there's nothing even close to a story here, you psycho.
right,
Or
exactly,
if there was, it was that kind of thing where it was like, oh, this is not you didn't vet this story very much, did you?
right,
Yeah,
exactly,
yeah, I forget her thing, and it's not even to defend Kavanaugh because I'm sure he's a fucking dickhead, but like I
right.
was like, you don't got a lot here, lady.
No, not at all. I'm trying to find her name. It's driving me insane right now. Either way, doesn't really matter. But it turns out she adopted a few children, a couple of them from Haiti, and one of them being from the New Life Children Refuge, which was Laura Silsby's fucking organization that was tied to the Clinton Foundation, involved in international human trafficking operations and smuggling. And that alone, I thought was like, hold on. We have another sort of blatant example of an overlapping nature of kind of like these political assets, right? I think
Yeah,
there's no way you're an effective sort of just as far as being a public representative in this sort of environment. It you have to be compromised, right? There's no way around it. And in my mind, I feel like sexual blackmail has been sort of the top currency in DC for far too long, and that's very obvious if you go back to not only. I mean, there are artichoke documents that explain that they were using child prostitutes for human honeypot operations as early as the early 1950s, and that's when they were
Mm,
essentially grappling with this as a you know the ethical and moral dilemma that the intelligence agencies were dealing with at the time. Should we use children for
yeah.
sexual blackmail?
Well, I'm not laughing at that. I'm laughing at what that made me think of because I that's like the beginning of volume 1 of One Nation Under Blackmail by Whitney Webb.
Hmm.
Is it's like cute almost where they're like, ooh, we found it's like 1910 1920s, and they're like, ooh, we found out this guy's gay and he likes to put on ladies clothes, and you're like, yeah, that's light work now. Now now it's like you
Exactly.
got to trick them into like fucking sacrificing a kid over a pentagram or something.
Right.
It's like fuck. It's just funny how cutesy the shit back in the day feels. With who's it like? Who's the dude? I think it was like J. Edgar Hoover was into like cross dressing or something, and you're like, he'd
I
be a
will
fucking
say,
hero now.
right. I will say, I think that was almost a sort of whitewash in a way, because I'm feeling as if there's far more to. They were probably much more sadistic in their sexual
You think
proclivities.
so?
J.
Yeah,
Edgar Hoover, yeah, yeah. At least like he was blackmailed in the Blue Suite parties by Roy Cohn, who's Trump's mentor, right? Where's my Roy Cohn? Who
yeah,
sexually, so he raped Richard Kerr from the Kincora Boys Home and sexually trafficked him, and I mean that's a fact. So I just think
yeah.
it's absolutely ridiculous that
Now
anybody acts. Yeah.
you make it you make a really good point because it's like a lot of times you could be in the middle of being like, yo, look at this shit. And then you don't even realize you're in like a limited hangout where it's like the info you're getting is crazy, but you're like, they're only giving you like the tip of the iceberg. Like that's when Netflix did the fucking Epstein doc. It
Yeah.
was that was like the best example of it where if you don't know anything, you watch that and their whole message is like, look at this guy and this lady.
Yep.
They're the people who do this. And you're like,
Right.
what? You're telling me they traveled and had billions of dollars and you know
The
thousands and
sole
thousands.
perpetrators, Andy, the
Yeah,
sole perpetrators. There would
yeah.
never be a prominent network providing any sort of protection,
Well,
right?
that was the that well that's why I always like I always do this when I'm arguing like capitalism versus socialism is I try to just harp on logistics and I just go
Mhm.
like just start when it comes to like socialism just start at logistics and just if you look at the sheer fact that like it just doesn't work because you can't artificially set prices like that's like a way less emotional conversation and you can have like a more level-headed conversation. The thing with the Epstein shit when this shit got started off again when they had with like on the random Sunday night when they just had the statement and shit.
Right.
In the statement they're like, yeah, Epstein like rape and assaulted and sex trafficked 1,000 girls. But him and Ghislaine were like the only two doing that. And you're like, well, logistically, they had to have crossed paths with some people.
100%, man.
What are you
It's
talking? And then on top of that, we have pictures of
right.
like Trump, Elon, Bill, all these people with them. So you're just, but they just what? They just the guy just had what? They had a cool conversation about eugenics or something. Like they just
Yeah.
because that's the other part. That's what I've been learning more about Epstein recently. I didn't realize how obsessed with eugenics he is, and
Oh,
how
yeah.
obsessed with like all those people who run in those circles. They're super
Oh,
obsessed
dude.
with eugenics and all this weird shit.
I'm gonna have to show you, Peter Nygard here in a moment, then, Canada's Epstein, right? So
Oh, okay.
there's this insane, um hold on, I'll have to find it here in a second, because there Juliet Bryant is one of the Epstein victims, and she had some fascinating claims that are honestly just um like extraordinary to me, right? And especially because it essentially claims that she woke up on an operating table at the Zorro Ranch, New Mexico property in the middle of the night, paralyzed, and that basically they harvested her eggs, okay, and that makes sense as far as his eugenics policy of like he had a stable of women he was attempting to impregnate at all times at the Zorro property, and
Yeah,
that by the way, there's a very strange how eerily close in proximity geographically that Zorro Ranch property is to a military base in New Mexico,
of
which
course
to
it is.
me, come on now, like at this point, man, I'm beginning to think that obviously Brad Bankley came on the show and he was talking to me about how much DoD funding the Epstein network truly had. I mean, you had individuals who were responsible for many of the like scientific measures during the COVID policies in the lead up, and just
Yeah,
understanding, how many prominent individuals are legitimately tied directly to,
yeah.
the Epstein network,
And
and then you.
that's the other element of this too. When you're trying to relate to normal people, you're like, just by the way, you help fund some of the worst shit. Now it's not your fault, but like they stole your money to help fund some of the worst shit ever. And that's why I always, it's like the more you learn, the more you want to just laugh at the idea of like, if we just get the right people in there or something.
Yeah.
That's why I'm always just like, I always just encourage like, you almost want to go to the government to be like, hey man, no hard feelings, but you guys
Mhm.
clearly can't do this right. So how about we just, hey man, no hard feelings. How about you guys just knock it off? Go away. Just go
Right.
away and knock it off. Because
Honestly.
it can't be worse without you. I gotta imagine. Because like that's the other thing too that always makes me laugh. They're like, but without the government, it's always whenever they go like, well, how would we do this without the government? They always bring up shit that is like, well, that's like the government's. They'll bring up like nukes and shit like that. And
Right.
all this other shit. And you're like, that's the hilarious part where it's like any of those arguments that do come off as reasonable, it's
Mhm.
just a fucking pointless bullshit thing that became a reality solely because of psychopaths in the government who were stealing your money. But
Absolutely.
I'm getting sidetracked. Where were we
No, you're
again
good,
with the
buddy.
military institutions and the you said the DOJ or DOD money or whatever?
Right, yeah, and you mentioned, just as far as well, I was talking about the transhumanist eugenics, as well,
Yes.
because I think it's
Yes.
so interesting, and the Peter Nygard example is hilarious, dude. I have to share I have to actually share a video here in a second with you because it's very short and you'll be if you haven't seen it before, it's just another just I think very important vital window into what these sort of billionaire transhumanists were attempting to or are attempting to achieve. And also he had uh, a he also had a private island, right? And
Nice.
right, and again, like all of these women were going missing, like native women to the area as well were just going missing around Peter Nygard's place, which is very interesting because of how much he was attempting to harvest a women's eggs, and talking about how much it's a crime that we view essentially period blood as waste, and that we don't harvest period blood, and various like yeah, it's very strange what he was talking about, and as well as
Damn, I didn't
you
know I was gonna hear. I've never heard that sentence ever. So that's you guys got
I'm
to
glad.
watch me hear a sentence for the first time. That was fucking weird. Yeah, that's the
Um,
other. Well, that's always a point. That's why I love listening to Dave Smith. Shout out Part of the Problem because he always goes. He always like brings it because I think everyone gets caught up in like the circus of everything, and he always like brings it back down to earth and just points out. He's like, can we just always acknowledge whether you like always acknowledge how fucking weird these people are? Because
yeah.
it's like, dude, even if you take away a lot of the conspiracy shit, they're still weird fucking people. And then when you
Mhm.
learn about stuff like this, like you just said the sentence harvesting period blood, which I didn't know people did that. I didn't know that was an option for your day. I didn't know you could do that during the day. Yeah, it just heightens the fact that you're like, how fucking weird. And they're not normal. And I don't know if they're fucking lizards, but that was the big thing I realized with I'm not deep into what's his name, David Icke. I'm not deep
Right.
into his shit, but I go like, dude, if you don't take him literally, because I
Mhm.
heard him do the whole breakdown of the lizard people and this and that, and I go, dude, if you don't take him literally, he's kind of cooking. Because it's
Right.
like, dude, I don't know if they're actually lizards, but I wouldn't be shocked to find out.
Exactly.
Legitimately, they're fucking weird.
My God, I have too many notes everywhere, dude. Yeah, I pulled the whole wrong pack. But anyway, I did find it. It's very interesting. But yeah, you're 100% accurate on that statement because again, it's like this is I believe that every if you take David Icke as far as the way he describes the lizard people, in my mind, it's like it's the sociopathic lizard brain, right?
Yeah,
I kind of interpret it in that way, much more than the actual,
like
what
they
is
lay
he?
in the sun and heat their
Shape-shifting
bellies.
lizard people, right?
Yeah,
Where shape-shifting lizard people, which I will say that Juliet Bryant herself claimed. Now, if you're considering, and she's the Epstein victim, right? But at least one of them. But if you're considering, what potentially happened, the amount of psychological abuse, the potential pharmaceutical agents, beyond the amount of trauma that was sort of endured, that can also fracture off the psychological, just kind of neural pathways in your mind to create these dissociative identity disorder alters and things of that nature. It's
yeah,
like that is and then hypnotism as well. I think all of those things factor into the playbook of what they utilize to perform the abuse in a sophisticated. Now, just as far as the techniques, they're sophisticated, right? They're advanced, and I think that people are too unaware of the level of kind of psychological control. That these mind manipulators have possessed for generations now, and that includes like you want to talk about remotely triggering a Manchurian candidate. Okay, we have evidence of documents that the CIA was capable of doing this utilizing a telephone in 1953. I'm sorry, like, do we think that they lost that capability, like NASA going to the moon? Oh yeah, we just lost it. We don't know how to do it anymore. It's just so funny to me. I'm like, all right, but we're gonna go to Mars. But still, it's like when you see what Epstein was allegedly involved with as well, though. I think, yeah, he was a diabolical, sociopathic lizard person to a certain extent,
yeah,
and now the shape shifting aspect, I was just utilizing the idea of fracturing off these neural pathways to where who knows what you saw when you were under the influence of these pharmaceutical agents and hypnotism and various other
yeah.
aspects of what they were doing to the minds of their victims.
Well, even
You're telling
too.
me you couldn't actually witness a shapeshifter, like someone shapeshift into a lizard for a brief moment while you're under the influence of some insane, mind-altering
Yeah.
substance? I mean,
Well, even
absolutely.
even too the term like the term mind control can be like relative too, where I know everyone thinks like everyone always pictures you pulling out a watch and going you're getting very sleepy, and it's like, well, I don't know, man. What happened when the Ukrainian war started? Like, you think everyone just sat down and really like read up on it and was like, oh no, we need to back Ukraine? You're like, no, I remember. I'm not trying to shit on my aunt, but like just out of nowhere, just call out my aunt. I love her dearly. I love you so much, Aunt. But no. Like I would just see family members who I've never once talked to them about politics. I know they don't know a lot about politics, and
Right.
it's just immediately like Ukrainian flags, or it's like the shit with COVID. Like, there was like I'll even give them benefit of the doubt. 2 weeks to flatten the curve came off as reasonable, but then all this stuff got to a certain point where you're just like, they'd say 6 feet apart, and you're just walking around going like, they just made that up. You know what I mean? Like, they just made that up, and you realize that, and you realize like, dude, like, it doesn't have to be a fucking a watch and you're getting sleepy. It's like, if people are willing to let their guard down, there's different methods of getting them to do whatever you want. So
Right.
it's why I'm still not like, I'm still curious about the Manchurian candidate stuff. Like, it still feels above my pay grade of comprehension, but at the same time, like, I don't rule any of it out just because it's all like, yeah, you see people casually just doing whatever big institutions tell them to do. Why wouldn't
Right.
they? You know what I mean? Like, what the fuck do you think? What do you think a bunch of kids lining up to go buy $100 fucking what's the hype beast shit, whatever that fashion
Mm.
shit is, I god damn it, I'm so old, I don't know any of the goddamn, but like, you've seen them You've seen them before where it's like, oh, we have a limited run because I remember I checked
Right.
out one of those t-shirts one time. They're not good quality. Like
No.
I've watched a bunch of those videos where it's like the shit's not good quality. It's just for the image. And it's like, what do you call that? Where they just go, this is happening. Everyone lines up and they just
The trend.
buy all the shit like zombies. You're like,
Yeah.
that's like some sort of mind control.
Yeah, it's the collectivist trend in a way, because and I think that that is how you can create and condition a compliant general public, right?
Yeah.
Is you sort of yeah, you manufacture that strange in my mind it's this delusion, the grand delusion that has been sort of structured for us to all view ourselves in this egoic way, to where we believe we're the leading we're the leading actor in the film, right? And essentially, we're all living through this extraordinary movie where we're essentially playing out as the I think it's the hero's journey that everyone is internalized to a certain point, to where they believe the world is orchestrated around them. And I think that this is a sickness, it's a mental illness at a certain point, and it's what's leading so many of us into this inability to reflect on our own sort of character defects to a certain extent. And that's why I think, like, the more self-aware you can become, the better off you are, and the more you become a net positive to society at large, right?
Yeah.
And that is the point of why I believe collectivism is a trap, and it's the poison pill, and why if you only pursue right individual sovereignty, you will effectively become a net positive for the collective, and that is what the collective majority. And I think the intent is to design a culture that I believe is inverted in terms of the ethical moral values. And again, it's the inverted moral landscape we all find ourselves in, to where we're being ruled over by a pedophile class insulated from accountability, that are prioritizing your children. And
Yeah.
by the way, it's fascinating stuff, man. Like, I found out about basically there was this recent example of the judge. And so you saw that what was his name, Tom, the individual, I can't remember his last name, started with a V, but the Israeli cybersecurity pedophile, right?
Yep.
That was
I didn't know his name,
yeah,
but I heard about that guy. Yeah.
right. So basically, I got to pull his name now. Tom Villa, yeah, Alexandrovich. It wasn't a V. But
Yeah.
yeah, Tom Alexandrovich, right? And so he was the executive director of the Cyber Defense Division at the Israel National Cyber Directorate. He legitimately, apparently, also contributed to the country's cyber dome to protect civilian cyberspace, and also has overseen Israel's response to the use of crypto by anti-Israel groups, including Hamas, in the aftermath of the October 7 attacks. He apparently would answer directly to Bibi Netanyahu as well, which is hilarious. And
Hmm.
so it turns out that there's now he gets whisked away back to Israel after sort of escaping any of these charges, after luring a retarded minor to apparently at least digitally commit sex acts, right? Essentially,
Was it an actual minor or was it like a cop, you know?
well, it was a retarded minor. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah. So it was just a minor with mental illness, or legitimately had like a mental disability, and
Yeah.
but still, you had at the exact same time you have a Vegas police sergeant who's also arrested, and he's arrested and he's convicted for up to 10 years for illegal arrests and child pornography. Now I'm thinking maybe he was actually attempting to, because if you consider the idea that obviously the individual I believe the uh who was the prosecuting hold on, I need to find it, because there's a woman who was directly has a background where she was placed specifically in charge of sort of the prosecution, right? And basically by the current Trump administration. And so again, it seems as if she allowed this to take place, although she did come out later and even address that fact and claim that that it wasn't her, it was actually a judge who made this ruling, and as far as allowing him to escape and didn't seize his passport, right, and allowed him to get back to Israel. But either way, it seems as if it at the very least there were some red flags raised as far as the individuals surrounding the case itself and the timing of them being sort of positioned in that sort of role to where they would have the ability to kind of step in, let's say, and disrupt the just any sort of legitimate pursuit of justice, I guess, in this case.
Okay.
And so then you have not only that, as far as the timing of this Vegas police sergeant, my mind thought, okay, well, what if this individual actually wasn't making false arrests or illegal arrests and didn't possess child pornography? What if he was actually just honestly pursuing, this case in a way with integrity and was then kind of set up and forced to take the fall because he wouldn't comply with the overall kind of justification. That's just speculation on my end. I just think it's interesting timing. But what I will say is one more aspect of that is that there's a former Las Vegas judge, right, who she kills herself allegedly after being forced to resign for attempting to expose a local company she claimed was a sex trafficking front that prioritized targeting the children of Las Vegas government officials. And so that makes sense to me, right? They're prioritizing targeting the children of Las Vegas of Las Vegas government officials, which that specifically is like, I think it reveals the playbook of how you would compromise individual political assets or local
Yeah.
officials and authorities to kind of like fall in line with the overall agenda. And so it makes more sense why this Israeli pedophile cybersecurity official was so protected in Vegas. And then obviously oh Jesus, my dog just sneezed so hard. But anyway, so yeah, there was one point I meant to make earlier about Edith Kermit Roosevelt, right? The first lady. And
Yeah.
and because you had asked me like about the secret societies and the sort of structure behind just I think the influence on the current structure of modern society and how the state kind of exists and the role it's fulfilling. And she claims this is from 1962 newspaper column. And she says there's an establishment in the United States. The word establishment is a general term for the power elite in international finance, business, and professions, largely from the Northeast, who wield most of the power regardless of who is in the White House. Most people are unaware of the existence of this, quote, legitimate mafia. Yet the power of the establishment makes itself felt from the professor who seeks a foundation grant to the candidate for a cabinet post or State Department job. It affects the nation's policies in almost every way. For example, the Council on Foreign Relations in New York City, subsidized by Rockefeller interests since 1927, boasts a membership of at least 90% establishment figures. I just find it interesting that she would go she would go out of her way to essentially kind of describe, right, the diabolical influence of this sort of this elite structured power cabal that is
Yeah.
in no way they're deciding. It's the same thing that even Woodrow Wilson, right? He comes out and he claims as much of a failure as he was as a president, he comes out and he claims that basically all of his decisions were entirely influenced by these private individuals who have, the vast majority of power and influence over the political establishment. And so when you have presidents who are essentially and what did he do? He presided over the implementation of the Federal Reserve international banking system, right? And this cabal that has been firmly in place for far too long, financing this dystopian outcome. And I mean, it's like, and we can point all the way back to, the creature from Jekyll Island, and understand the individuals who were responsible for implementing that Federal Reserve banking system, and the reason that we're in this sort of crony capitalist environment that we exist in today, that utilizes socialism whenever it so chooses, just as a sort of you know
Yeah.
it's self-serving, right? Whenever they can funnel more of your taxpayer dollars into their pocket, then they will do so. And so it's again, like, we don't need more government programs to solve the problem. I can
Yeah.
guarantee you that, right? Which is so hilarious.
Yeah,
But
it's kind of funny because it's like the more it's like the more you talk about all this stuff, it feels like the only way out of it. It feels like the only way out of it is just to like not participate in any way possible, because it's this weird thing where it's like they're gonna do what they want to do, but they have to have you like play the game.
right.
You know what I mean? Because that seems like a consistent where I remember what the fuck was it? Matt Taibbi had this book. I forget what it was called, but he was talking about how, because a lot of people remember the war in Iraq, like 9/11 happened, and then on 9/12 we just went over and fucked shit up. It's like, dude, they were gonna do that anyway, but they had to have that like manufactured consent. It was like a year or two of propaganda before they actually went over to like Iraq and Afghanistan and shit. And like that, to me, that's the one thing I've noticed is in every version of this, they never go like, we're just going to do this. Fuck you. You know what I mean? They go like, no, you want this. They trick you into it. It's why I always go like, it's why I always felt like I remember the more I learned about socialism and shit, it always feels like it's this like death cult mind virus thing where it's like, no, you want to do this, and it's like, but it's gonna kill you, but you want that, you want to kill yourself and shit like that, and it's like, but yeah, and then that's why I always, and I need to learn more about it, but there's conveniently not a lot of public info about it, but I always go back to Satanist shit because that's what I heard the Satanists do. They trick you. They don't fuck you up. They trick you into doing the bad thing. And I go, that's what our government's doing. Austin.
Exactly. Hey, man, I think that is why, like, you can point back to Michael Aquino as such an important character. In I believe, if you listen to John DeCamp, who's, the senator from Nebraska and legal representative for Paul Bonacci, victim of the Franklin scandal, it's he legitimately ties Project Monarch and essentially as the key operative who's running
again. I'm sorry.
So Project Monarch is basically trauma-based mind control.
Gotcha,
is essentially what it is, and they called them the Monarch Boys for a time, which they were
like a cool doo-wop band. It's unfortunate. It's unfortunate how cool that sounds.
Truly, honestly, but we had mentioned the Delphi method, this appeal to authority earlier, and I forgot to explain it because it's exactly what you were basically attempting to describe, which is again, the Rand Corporation sort of developed this method, but it's defined as a structured communication technique, a method relying on a panel of experts to reach a consensus and develop professional guidelines accordingly. This appeal to authority, again, is of course, like, if you remember what Henry Kissinger claims, this is so crazy, as far as he confessed that at one point that an expert is just someone who articulates the needs of those in power, right? Which I thought that's such a great way to describe our current environment, because it's just like you have all of these individuals desperately appealing to authority, but the experts say there's a consensus that climate change is real,
and that fucks with your head too, because it's like,
absolutely,
that's why I thought like, I remember there was a stretch of time where I was like, am I a fucking genius? And I'm like, no, I'm not a liar, and I've found like truthful people who are also not liars to get like my info and shit like that, and I was like, yeah, no, my brain doesn't work any better than anyone else's fucking brain. It's just I don't have I have, thankfully, a lot less of the extra bullshit that when you're seeing something factual, there's that extra bullshit everyone has where they go, no, go over there. You know what I mean? Because like that's you don't like feed into all the extra shit, but that dude, it's like there's all these people who if you look over, especially over COVID and then before that and stuff, if you look at all the people who've been right about everything, they don't have that like flashy prestige around them. Like Ron Paul is a great example. Ron Paul's been right about fucking everything, but at no point is he ever presented with this like flashy prestige by the establishment. He's just a bunch of weirdos like us being like, nah, that dude's just killing it every day.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think that's what I think the beautiful connecting tissue between the just like-minded individuals in this sort of the circles that we swim in a certain way, right? I think we're all one entirely like principally opposed to being lied to. I think that drives me completely insane, is feeling as if I'm just being led by the nose and lured into traps by design that are strategically
It's been
manufactured
my
for that reason.
problem. It's been my problem my whole life where I'm just like, I want to be a part of the group, but I just have that like autism where you're like, no, this is wrong. This is
Yeah.
inaccurate. That's why a bunch of fucking Paramore fans are yelling at me on TikTok because I was like, no, this new song fucking sucks.
That's too funny.
And I was like, no, it's so funny. I'm literally, because I've been using TikTok more, and I'm having girls yell at me and be like, no, Haley Williams is the best. And I'm like, no,
oh my God.
I was like, no, her lyrics don't make sense. And it's just like, I don't want to be this guy. I just have to, because I get tense if I'm just like, no, you're all, because honestly, dude, because like not to go down this whole rabbit hole, but it's like the singer Haley Williams, she puts out this song, she has this one chunk of lyrics in there that everyone's like resharing online as like, oh my God, this is so like deep and complex. And I go, she sounds like a psychopath. And I'm just like, and I didn't want to post the video because I knew a bunch of fucking just dippy girls were just gonna be fucking mean to me all day. Right. And I was like, but it's just like that tension builds up. And I go, I was like, will someone else say this so I don't have to? And I go, all right, I guess I'm gonna be a dickhead now. But no, right. But like I say all that to go back to your original point where it's like I think because like I've noticed that with like all the dudes who are into this shit, we all have like a similar through line where you're like, we're all like different people with our interests, but we all have that thing where you're like, stop lying to me. Yes. I know you're lying to me. It's obvious you're lying to me. You're not being sneaky. Just stop. And like, I think that's the constant through all of us. Cause I like you and me, I'm sure we're all like into different art and stuff like that. But when we start talking, we just link up on the same thing. We're on that like same wavelength, not same interest, but the same wavelength.
Absolutely. And I think that's crucial, but it's like the understanding of not only are we being, deliberately deceived at a systematic level. I mean, it's also the fact that they're strategically targeting the most vulnerable among us. Yeah. Which is just more infuriating, right? Because there's no protectors in place that are kind of just at least trying to, in some sort of way, act on the best interest of the average individual, and especially the children, which I think is diabolical in terms of how much it's been systematically entrenched, the strategic targeting of unfortunate underprivileged children who have no real guardians that can even stand in the way of this sort of traumatic abuse that they would then become. Well, at least like it's very strange because there are examples of like obviously very underprivileged children being brought into networks to then essentially be human guinea pigs, right? But also even being brought into networks to train them at like pedophile camps, propped up by the intelligence agencies in the deep woods. And that always reminds me of Henry Lee Lucas, right? And the Hand of Death cult. And it also reminds me of, if you remember that when I covered the Omar Mateen story, is crazy because there was technically there was a alleged claim from James Wesley Howell, if
Wait,
you
that's
remember.
the sorry, just to clarify, that's
Mm.
the
Pulse nightclub
nightclub,
shooting.
Pulse
Yeah.
nightclub. Yeah, that was a
Right.
you guys should look, that was a great episode because that was that's actually where I first fucking that reminds me of where I first hit you up was when you had the Vegas shooting episode on Clint's podcast. That
Right.
was the biggest that one was the biggest one that was like it's literally a 180 from anything you think. And the Pulse nightclub one was a very similar situation where that's a very interesting one because it's like a huge 180 from anything that was reported on like
It's
the
so
corporate
crazy.
press. Yeah.
It is so crazy, and especially if you consider like this insane uh um it was basically this Islamic radicalization, fundamental Islamic seminary radicalization pipeline that was set up online, and that's essentially Abu Taba, who this guy basically was a Fed. It's crazy. He Marcus Dwayne Robertson. He basically has a CIA background. Worked on behalf of the FBI as well for a time, and he was the individual who he's even connected back because he's a former U.S. Marine and FBI agent who turned into a Muslim extremist who happened to be Omar Mateen's imam in Orlando.
Sick.
You're like,
Sick.
hold on. Wait. You're telling me that this individual is who is responsible for inciting the violence that Omar Mateen would allegedly, act out on at the Pulse nightclub? Although I will say, when you listen to the recordings of him with the hostage negotiator, that was like a perfect model of what not to do when negotiating with an individual who is an active shooter.
Oh yeah,
And
is it real bad?
it was so bad. I'm just like, man, just again, it was a prime example of what not to do in my mind. And he claims that there were co-conspirators who were on roofs of basically on the roof of buildings outside nearby the Pulse nightclub, and James Wesley Howe that sort of he sort of confirmed that much, and he's the individual who at this very same time that this is the exact same day that the Pulse nightclub gets shot up. You have James Wesley Howell on the opposite side of the country who's heading to the Pride Parade in Los Angeles with a car full of weapons and pipe bombs. And
Shit.
and yeah, it's crazy because when he's arrested, he basically says that he mentions one. This is so nuts because he mentions that there was manufactured terrorism, right? And this is a basically a Santa Monica connection to the Pulse nightclub shooting.
Okay.
And so you have the Santa Monica Police Department. They claim James Wesley Howell, who's a man from Indiana, was caught with explosives and weapons Sunday morning. This was in 2000. I believe it was 2016 is when this happened. Right, same time, same exact day of the Pulse nightclub, June 15th. And so it turns out that the Santa Monica police catch this James Wesley Howell with explosives and weapons in his vehicle. And so he claims, and the Santa Monica police claim, that at least as many as 5 people were involved in planned attacks on gay communities in both Florida and California. So the LA Times reported that Santa Monica police chief Jacqueline Seabrooks, she says on Twitter that the 20-year-old Indiana man, James Howell, told one of her officers after he was arrested that he wanted to, quote, harm the gay pride event. So after the FBI took over the case, a spokeswoman comes out from the Santa Monica Police Department, and she it was actually Saul Rodriguez, indicating that Seabrooks was mistaken and offered that the Santa Monica detectives who were working the case are, quote, not aware of what the suspect's intentions were at this point. So this is, I think, directly when you have the feds step in and they restructure the narrative because they go, no, we can't have the public believing that that's legitimately the motive here because it could raise awareness and at the very least raise some red flags surrounding these strategically timed events. So then you have, because again, it's like this all came to my attention. If you remember when Sam went on Rogan, not this last time, the time before, when Sam Tripoli goes on
Yeah.
Rogan, right? He brings up this New Mexico compound that was training school shooters.
I'm so
Right?
glad you brought that up. I wanted to ask you about that because I basically saw, I saw a screenshot and I heard Sam bring that up on Rogan, and I've been so curious, and I just never taken the time to actually. So yes,
Crazy.
I'm so glad you brought that up.
It's so crazy because you look at it and it is insane. It's like a makeshift training compound,
Yeah,
and it looks like it basically says if you pull from like the local New Mexico media at the time, they were basically saying utilizing these court documents that there were 5 defendants in this New Mexico child abuse case who were under investigation, and this was all based on this quote: "the training of children with weapons and furtherance of a conspiracy to commit school shootings." This is in the court
wait,
documents.
so that's in the court document of what was
Yes,
this again? Of when they
this is in a
found the
district
plates?
court. Yeah, this is in a district court in New Mexico, and it's in 2018.
Okay,
And yeah, it seems like it was in the summer of 2018, like August, I believe. And so then you have essentially they're it looks like they're released from custody, but there's substantial likelihood the defendants were, this is according to the documents, may commit new crimes due to their planning and preparation for future school shootings. And so this
yeah,
is according to these court filings. And so there were criminal complaints that in the wake of all of this that claimed 11 starving children had been living in this filthy compound in Amalia in New Mexico that lacked electricity or even plumbing. And so then it turns out that this is all discovered based on an abduction, a child abduction, where a father had allegedly abducted his own son. So Siraj Wahaj was the individual who 9 months prior had apparently this is what caused the raid at the compound, and it was all in the search for the child named Abdul Ghani Wahaj,
hmm
a child with severe medical problems who allegedly was abducted from his by his father, who lived in Georgia at the time. And so it turns out that the boy's remains were found at the compound, and so it seems as if this was a 4-year-old, by the way, and it looks as if the child had died due to the lack of one, just obvious care, but for the individual child who's 4 years old and clearly can't care for themselves, but also just the lack of electricity and plumbing had just been left alone. And so you had 5 adults, including the father, and 3 women who were apparently facing 11 charges of child abuse related to the neglect and abuse of the children at this compound.
yeah,
And so that, to me, I instantly looked up who this individual was, right? Who's Siraj Wahaj, right? Because in my mind, he probably has some very glowing connections, right? And so
yeah,
I
yeah.
pull this up, and it turns out that the man arrested at the New Mexico compound is son of Imam with possible link to the 1993 World Trade Center bombing.
Ding, ding, ding,
It
ding, 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 ding.
it involved the blind sheikh Omar Abdul Rahman, who obviously, if you understand the history of that 93 false flag World Trade Center attack, that's
Yeah,
exactly what it was. It was a manufactured crisis, and it was all in the scope of, right, these radicalized imams, this international terrorism threat. It was the boogeyman, right? And they utilized this to essentially commit a targeted execution and assassinate a rabbi in New York, which was like a huge scandal when this occurred. And so this is all tied back to these manuals that were being discovered, right, from the JFK Warfare Center. This is so nuts when I discovered that this was all a part of it, and essentially they had this long-standing sort of connection to this insane 1993 false flag attack. And again, it's like when you realize the mind control manuals and things of that nature that were at the individual's apartment when he was as far as connected to the 93 World Trade Center bombing, then it draws in far more of like this clandestine operation that was clearly being conducted, right? And I think that just looking at like the strange let me pull this because it's so interesting. The Siraj Wahaj shares names with his son, right, who was arrested for this charge in New Mexico. And so he testified as a character witness, the father of the perpetrator who was running that mass shooter training compound in New Mexico. His father shared his same name and was apparently a co-conspirator as as a controversial Brooklyn imam. And so it's very interesting because you have obviously this FBI connection to this interesting court case that took place surrounding Omar Abdul Rahman, and this is all happening in '95, surrounding the plotting of the terror attacks, right? But anyway, let me pull it up on my Omar Mateen episode because it's so nuts to actually look at the strange connections to the JFK Warfare Center, right? Again,
Yeah.
it's like this is nuts to me how much you have. If you look at From PSYOP to Mind War, the psychology of victory that was sort of co-authored by um, Michael Aquino, right? And
What's that called?
it's called From PSYOP to Mind War, the psychology of victory.
Okay, I'm just gonna put it on my Amazon wish list.
It's important for sure. But again, it's like when you have individuals like Major Gregory Cease, who's an educational psychologist, serves as the chief of the PSYOP training branch of the JFK Special Warfare Center and School's Directorate of Training and Doctrine, right? Which has notable connections to September 11th attacks, obviously. And as I mentioned, the state-sponsored 93 World Trade Center bombing, as well as the murder of Rabbi Meir Kahane, which I mentioned as well. So El Said Nasser, one of the Blind Sheik's men, was arrested for the murder in 91, right? Now,
Yeah.
this is where dozens of Arabic bomb-making manuals and documents related to terrorist plots were found in Nasser's New Jersey apartment, with manuals from the U.S. Army John F. Kennedy Special Warfare Center and School, known formerly as SWICS, at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. Okay, you have secret memos linked to the Joint Chiefs of Staff and 1,440 rounds of ammunition also found in Nasser's apartment. Right?
Hell yeah.
Like
Hell
that
yeah.
is to me, like when you realize that the individual who co-authored with Michael Aquino, the From PSYOP to Mind War, then it's very important to understand how much he was headquartered. Obviously, he's the commander. He's so this is very interesting. Military intelligence, obviously Paul Villeli, lieutenant colonel, and PSYOP research and analysis team leader Michael Aquino. Right, they decide to co-author this book. And again, Michael Aquino is a former high-ranking member of Anton LaVey's Church of Satan.
Oh,
Uh,
dude. Sorry. I don't mean to cut you off. I didn't realize he was this fucking guy with the fucking
That's
eyebrows.
him, dude. That's him.
Wait, where are
Isn't
we?
that insane?
I didn't realize it was this fucker with the eyebrows. I've seen this
Mhm.
picture before. I didn't realize
Oh yeah. So
that dude,
that's
it goes back to being like, yeah, dude, these guys are fucking weird.
oh my god. I mean, to legitimately write a book called From PSYOP to Mind War: The Psychology of Victory, and then essentially draft a paper that you distribute, right, to encourage future thought within the PSYOP community, right?
Yeah.
Which is insane. And what did they say? This is so nuts to me, like how much they seemingly sort of in my mind, when you see what Mind War focuses on,
Yeah.
it's fascinating, right? Because again, it's like this is the framework that they hope to utilize in the context of like a mass shooting event, right? These emotional arousing false flags is what they call them, emotion arousing false flags. And so it's the Mind War presented in parts and phases. Part one defines the concept of mind war. Phase one introduces the redefinition of an assigned conflict in terms of an acceptable and practical outcome, diagnosis of the disease, a prescription of the cure. So, what does that sound like? That sounds like a problem reaction solution, right?
Yeah.
So, then you have part two, which describes a wide variety of old concepts consistently pursued through the mind war mission of the Army. Of course, propaganda and the general parameters are discussed, even referencing something called, quote, beyond propaganda and what's referred to as the influence continuum. Pre-Mind War mind control attempts are spoken of, subsequently leading into a small section dedicated to MK Delta, MK Ultra, and MK Search, Project Stargate, ESP, and Project Jedi. And Project Spellbinder, which was another one, which was strategically a part of creating the Manchurian Candidate, or
Yeah.
the what did they call them? It's obviously a sleeper assassin, but it's essentially uh, I forget what the reference that they used was basically. Oh, I know, a split personality spy who could basically
Yeah.
um, be given this set of instructions and basically pass messages without even knowing it, right? And also commit legitimate assassination without even being aware of it as well.
Yeah, yeah. I
And
remember. Yeah, what was the fucking book? Search for Manchurian Candidate. Yeah,
yeah,
and because
John
they
Mark.
mentioned, they mentioned that in that one where it was like they could fucking basically turn them on and off, and they
Yep,
didn't even know what they did.
exactly.
So they could, like,
And
because they wanted them to pass like a lie detector test if it ever
yep,
got to that
pass a
point.
polygraph. Exactly. They could still pass a polygraph because they had no conceptual awareness of what had transpired when they were triggered into the hypnotic state. And that's what I mean, that's the goal. I mean, again, it's and what do they continue to mention in the Mind War. He lists various methods of subliminal involuntary psych. They call it psych control, SLIPC, Psychon 1, Homo electromagneticus,
Hell yeah.
Psychon 2, brainwave resonance, Psychon 3, magnetism, A, transcranial magnetic stimulation, B, magnetic reconnection portals, atmospheric ionization, hypnotism, magic, and what's called the phenomenon of religion in the context of something they refer to as internal religious psyop, and the Army Chaplain Corps, which all seem to play a prominent role in this mind war. So after the section devoted to magic and what was referred to as, quote, a spoonful of sugar. How does that not sound like it falls perfectly onto the influence continuum, right? They use part 3, which introduces the campaign, starting with paramilitary operations under the guise of intelligence, emotion arousing violence, false flags, and the degradation of the individual. That's a quote. Like,
Yeah.
imagine that is what
That's all from that book you just mentioned.
all from that book, which is just like, my God, man, when you begin to realize, the diabolical effort and the impact that Michael Aquino has had, I
Yeah.
believe, like, look, I'm telling you, man, John DeCamp claims, and again, this Paul Benassi, right? He alleges this is allegations as far as Michael Aquino's role in the Monarch mind control program.
Okay.
And it starts by essentially, you have, you have, of course, Anton Chetkin's 93 interview with Paul Benassi, which I refer to often because it's very important. And this is obviously the Franklin scandal case, which there's an implication here from witnesses that obviously involve Iran-Contra, FBI, U.S. elites, and child torture and murder, state-sponsored child sex trafficking operations, but involving child pornography and snuff films as well, involved in the enterprise. And it's reported that Benassi smuggled child pornography into the Netherlands even. And so he was even present during the foundation of the North American Man-Boy Love Association in Boston, Massachusetts. Yeah. And it's very strange because he obviously claims that these are all just like these elite pedophiles who essentially formed an organization that would help normalize pedophilia, right, and potentially create a protected class for pedophiles where they would be brought under the LGBTQ plus umbrella as being viewed as a protected class because they're only being essentially targeted because of their sexual preference. And
Yeah.
now the
Which is
notion
liking
is
children. So you should probably target those people, but go on.
yeah, exactly.
And,
So
oh, what? Oh, you're just mad because I want to have sex with children?
yeah,
God.
dude, that's what they're
Yeah.
doing.
Yeah,
And you know
dude.
what else?
Yeah,
They
that
claim,
sucked ass.
they love the child, right? Many of the pedophiles will do this where they act like, no, they're sort of empowering the child and making them more special, right? And there's like pop culture references that we talked about recently on Already Dead, where like even in the context of like Doctor Sleep, isn't that what it was called, or something Sleep? The Stephen King,
Stephen King,
uh,
yeah.
dude, that creeps
The
me out, man.
it's like the sequel to The Shining.
Yeah, technically, yeah, it was.
Well,
Obviously,
that whole thing was just littered with like it was all about adrenochrome. I watched them.
adrenochrome's child sacrifice. It
I
was
never
strange.
I never read the book, but I saw the movie. It was like about adrenochrome.
Harvesting this strange resource coming emitting from a child under traumatic stress. I mean, that's
Yeah.
a legitimate. It's like, yeah, it was freaking. Honestly, I was very uncomfortable when I
No,
watched
it
it.
was because I had heard about adrenochrome and I forget if they proved it was real or whatever. But like when you
Mhm.
watch Doctor Sleep, you're like, oh, this is about that. Like one for
Right,
one. It's crazy.
exactly. And it's really nuts because I actually have you seen Blink Twice, that movie with Channing Tatum?
Yes. Yeah. I thought
Oh
it was
my
good.
god, it's
Ending was
very.
okay.
Yeah, I thought it was good. I think the ending was ridiculous. Obviously, they went woke as hell and tried to make it some sort of feminist shit, which I
It is
mean,
so
it seemed
it is so funny. Yes, the black woman's the evil person.
that's what happened.
You're
That
like,
now
what the
she's like using the same method to keep her abuser
You're
in
like,
in
see, even a black woman can be a huge piece of shit, just like you boys. Like, what the fuck? You guys are
it's
but
so
the
strange,
whole
right?
movie was great. That ending was just
Right.
weird.
Yeah, agreed. But again, it's like, what did they have as what was kind of very interesting to me was the conceptual introduction to like this induced amnesia memory altering substance, this drug that was
Yeah.
clearly being utilized, which this is what you know the claim is, as far as these individual victims who endure such profound abuse, right? They're essentially fractured in their psychological state of mind to that way they can endure such heinous abuse. And in Blink Twice, it was basically this memory altering drug delivered from this rare flower that was native to the island, right? That the tech billionaire Channing Tatum's character owned, which reminded me very much of Epstein. Obviously, I think there were direct parallels on purpose as far as the tech billionaire owning his private island and having and
I didn't
luring
even
these women down.
I didn't even pick up on that.
It's
That's so
crazy, right?
interesting. Yeah, I could see it. Yeah.
And then they use this chemical agent to basically control and deploy to have control of and engineer compliance basically is the goal. And yeah, you look at what it was. It was targeted memory erasure, right? Like, which is crazy. It was involved with the perfume, right? Induced compliance.
Yeah.
And essentially um, it was, if you remember, the snake venom was like essentially the counteracting substance that was the antidote, and you see why that strange woman and the staff of Channing Tatum on the island were tasked with killing all the snakes, right? Which to me was
Oh.
very interesting because the snakes would provide the counteracting chemical agent necessary for them to have memory recall, right? Which is like, oh my god, which is why what did they have to inevitably do? Drink that snake venom and wake up and
Yeah.
remember their abuse. And
Yeah.
just that moment I thought was done so well
I was
where
just gonna yeah, I was
yeah,
gonna agree. The way like they take the venom, I remember that part where they take the venom and like in the moment remember it, but have to not show that they remember it. I was like, that was
right.
really well fucking done.
Absolutely. And especially like that moment when you begin to realize, because it's like clearly it looked like they're having some weird pagan sex ritual in a way, right? They every night after dinner, that elite dinner that they would that they would experience after the sort of, you know, degenerate lifestyle of just partying by the pool all day, and then you eat this wonderful meal and you're presented with this mind altering substance. It's what, MDMA plus some sort of you know a mescaline or LSD, something that's causing you to have hallucinations, right? And,
Yeah.
and beyond that, the MDMA. And what are they wearing? They're wearing white, right? All the women are in pure white. They're like flowing gowns, and they're acting like snakes. In the fractured memories that you're having of like, why are they running from something? That's all
Yeah.
that you can see. Each scene, they're running from something, and then they start beginning to act more in a like they're moving, slithering in a way. It's like very strange, making snake
Yeah.
sounds, and then uh, and then waking up with dirt underneath the fingernails, not knowing why. And
Yeah.
then right? And then the moment though where the friend is essentially forgotten, right? Where the friend
Yeah.
basically
They're like, who is
disappears.
that? Who are you
And
talking
yeah,
about?
and she brings up, where is what's her name? I can't remember. And they had no memory. The other girls had
None. Yeah.
0 recall on even remembering this woman existed, and that instantly I turned to my wife and was just like, "Wow, like, that was done very well," I felt like, and again, the conceptual introduction to the general public who aren't quite aware of the level of influence that I think the honestly, just going through the Marc Dutroux case, like the Regina Louf, the DID, even with Paul Benassi, who I keep mentioning, with Michael Aquino, which just at least before we get out of here, I want to mention a couple extra things on Aquino himself, because I think understanding the origins of Monarch is so important, especially in this context. And Paul Benassi suffered from multiple personality disorder, now called obviously dissociative identity disorder more often. And he stated that as a youth, he had been transported across the U.S., was forced to have sex with various people, forced to deliver drugs, forced to participate in satanic snuff films, where Lawrence E. King was obviously present. Who Lawrence E. King was, he was a sort of Republican power broker. He sang the national anthem at the 1984 Republican National Convention, which is just crazy. He had direct
Oh,
connections.
is that Larry King in the Franklin scandal?
Yeah, Lawrence E. King.
Yeah.
Yep,
Okay.
yep. And so Paul Benassi was basically his kind of, he ran roughshod over the other victims after Lawrence E. King brought him in under this project, and I believe Michael Aquino is directly responsible for that. And according to Paul Benassi and a few other witnesses, allegedly the Johnny Gosh abduction, right? The paper boy that, and I believe was in Iowa, maybe Idaho.
Yeah.
I think it was Iowa, but he's a paper boy who's one of the first on the back of a milk carton, right? Had been abducted,
Oh,
and
okay.
yeah, it was a very famous scandal and story in the 80s there, and yeah, Paul Benassi claims that he was a part of a fetish that was strategically ordered through Project Monarch by an individual elite member who ordered the paperboy fetish through Michael Aquino in order to gain access to local paperboys. And Jacob Wetterling was one of them, and Johnny Gosh was another. And then Johnny Gosh's mother, Noreen Gosh, even called the authorities and the local police and said, "There's going to be a newspaper boy will be abducted in this area around this exact time, and you guys need to be aware of this." And it happened, legitimately happened, which is so crazy to me that this all occurred. And again, I'm telling you, man, there's no distinction between the Finders and Franklin in my mind anymore. I see it
Okay.
as the same. And at this point, I'm starting to believe that Epstein falls under that very same umbrella, because Air America was a part of Lex Wexner Les Wexner and Epstein's operation.
Was that the CIA airplane?
That
Yeah.
was a CIA cutout that was also ran by the Finders cult. They
Oh,
used Air America as well. So it
okay.
was just handed off to the Epstein network, which is just so fascinating that this has happened and people aren't aware of it, you know?
Yeah.
And again, it's like, man, there is definitely evidence out there that proves that there is this deliberate, you know, at least covert operation, to prop up and facilitate child sex trafficking, and the at least the black market criminal enterprise, and as well, which involves the spectrum, right? Which is child abductions, drug running, MK Ultra, child pornography, prostitution, snuff films, right?
Yeah.
And ritualistic in nature as well, because they're attempting to appeal to this occult ideological doctrine as well. So you have, like, even when the Atlanta child murders, you have that playing out, right, where some of the kids who were basically drug mules for the operation, and were also helping procure younger children for the network, were also some of them were caught holding back some of the drug money, right, from the operation, that they were distributing the drugs, but they were holding back some of the cash for themselves, and they were exposed in doing so, and then sacrificed in a ritualistic snuff film on the property of a disgraced Indian burial ground.
Jesus Christ.
Which is real, and they have members of the organization running security in the surrounding woods, right? Same as like in Untermeyer Park in upstate New York, where Detective James Rothstein discovered the mass grave of German Shepherd dogs, and it was right near the Devil's Cave. That was before it was filled in, and it turns out that's where the Son of Sam, all these people, the children, 22 disciples of hell, were all hanging out at Untermeyer and a couple of other of these. And
Yeah.
and what about the occult symbology at Untermeyer? The sphinxes and these massive, uh, um, what's it called? The damn it. Why can't I think of where, like in DC, the major, dude. Anyway, it doesn't matter. The symbolic nature of the occult symbolism, right? It's important to
Talking
understand.
about like the goat or the ball or
No,
pentagram or
the massive, uh uh my god, dude, I can't believe that it's escaping me. Just the pool surrounding it, and it's just a huge, looks like a huge dick in the sky, basically, right? Which is
oh.
super.
Oh, I don't. Oh, the Lincoln Memorial or something.
No, that's not. No, I'm like, I can't believe that I'm
The
forgetting the
Washington
name of
Yeah,
this.
isn't there one of the monuments that just looks like a big dick? Washington Monument, I think.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah,
My
yeah, yeah.
god, dude.
That's so
Hold on.
funny. You're like, I
I
was just
have to
trying to
pull it
think of
because,
the
again, it's like, this is I think there are fertility sex rituals that are conducted very often, right? Yeah, you're right. The
okay.
Washington Monument, but what is the um a phallic object, right? That's as far as the monument itself, right? It's an ancient Egyptian symbol in many ways. The obelisk, damn it. Why couldn't I remember that?
Obelisk.
Yes, yes. Exactly. So the obelisk, right, is basically ancient Greek, ancient Egyptian. It's this pyramid sort of monument, but it's also very much, I think it's a monolithic structure. It's utilized as a symbol, right, of
Okay.
kind of like the divine spark in a way, right, which is very interesting. At least many
Yeah.
people view it as that. It's almost a representation of life. At least some people view it as that, but I think that's kind of not. It's not the correct interpretation in terms of the occult, nature of the structure itself. But still,
Gotcha.
I just can't remember why I even brought that up. But the point being is that you have, like, obviously, with Michael Aquino and Paul Benassi, you have an actual window into monarch mind control and how the project was structured. And I think it's really important to have that sort of frame of reference in that context, because again, it's like he's running child pornography internationally on behalf of NAMBLA and NAMBLA members, who basically he claims that this was a pedophile group that obviously has now been given official status, by semi-official status, by the United Nations, which shouldn't be surprising, knowing the direct impact and role that Michael Aquino had with the United Nations, these diplomatic missions that he was conducting, while also going to this insane. He's performing a satanic ritual at a Nazi castle, right, while he's on these diplomatic missions, which is so crazy that happened,
What?
right? I know, I'm telling you, people should be far more aware of kind of the insane connections to the Belgian paramilitary underground and the satanic rituals being conducted as well. But again, it's like this all comes up in the context of the Dutroux affair, which again, it's like
Yeah, that's
it's a whole other
a whole
thing,
other
right?
fucking can of worms.
Exactly.
Yeah, man. I think this is a good place to wrap up. We definitely covered a lot of interesting shit.
Right.
Yeah, definitely let the people know where they can check you out and stuff like that.
Sounds good, buddy. Yeah, I think um basically it was just I just wanted to pull that ridiculous story about the World War II castle real quick because
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's crazy. And this is obviously after he leaves the Church of Satan and he creates the Temple of Set, right? And essentially he's by the way in the 60s at some point he's becoming a psychological warfare expert, and he's serving with the Green Berets, which is interesting considering the Manchurian Candidate uh, um, operations, and I think that had been strategically utilizing members of the special forces. But so in the 1970s, he's a liaison officer in NATO, right, in several European countries. While he's on tour visiting NATO installations in Europe, he makes a stop at Wilsberg Castle, not sure how to pronounce it, which during World War II used to be Heinrich Himmler's occult sanctuary for the SS, right? Where they strategically outfitted it for ritualistic blood sacrifice.
Jesus.
And Aquino even performed a satanic ceremony in the castle's Hall of the Dead, right? I just can't believe that people aren't aware of this, right? Because
Well,
he served.
isn't that a big thing too with the Nazis? Is they're like way more into occult shit than people remember?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's what the Tool Society and I believe. I mean, obviously, they very much held Helena Blavatsky on a pedestal, and that's the Theosophical Society and theosophy in general. I think was very much. But yeah, that there was far more in terms of. I did an episode on Hitler and the Nazi occult. I believe it was actually removed from YouTube. That was one of the few.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that one, my Pizzagate episode, which was honestly one of my best performing episodes before they pulled that one. And then the JFK assassination episode, I believe, was the other one that they pulled.
They pulled
Um,
that one?
they pulled that one. Yeah, I thought it was strange,
What
but
angle did you like what different angle? Because it's like, dude, I was literally listening to a JFK pod on whatever the pod was. It was like an iHeart Radio. It's like one of the most mainstream fucking
right.
conspiracies in the world.
I think it may have been just the fact that one there's like too many connections as far as Lee Harvey Oswald, the International Trade Mart, and Kerry Thornley. The sort of you had the essentially whenever the actual organization of the Process Church was effectively
Mm,
yeah, it was basically it's very strange because you have Tommy Jude Baumler who basically incorporates this chapter of the process, and he's involved as well with this cabal in New Orleans at the
yeah.
time. And I'm telling you, there's crazy stories about David Ferry, right? Who obviously he's if you look at Tommy Baumler, he worked in Guy Bannister's office alongside David Ferry, incorporated the Process Church. And according to these corporate documents from Louisiana, they show Thomas Jude Baumler and Jack Martin jointly incorporated the Louisiana Psychoanalytic Association as well, and some New Orleans citations from the Times-Picayune, which is a local newspaper. Basically, Tommy Baumler was involved in the American Association of Ethical Hypnotists, and so was David Ferry, and he himself had books on the occult and hypnotism, and in Daniel Hopsicker's Barry and the Boys about Barry Seal, it basically came out and was exposed that David Ferry also belonged to the Old Catholic Church alongside William Joseph Bryan, who trained David Ferry in hypnotism, and he was a Catholic bishop and a known pedophile.
Oh,
And I believe David Ferry was as well, right? Who and Judith Ferry Baker, she claims in her book that it's called David Ferry, Mafia Pilot, Participant in Anti-Castro Bioweapon Plot, Friend of Lee Harvey Oswald, and Key to the JFK Assassination. It's a very long title. but still, she claims that Ferry was part of MK Ultra, that he was trying to do experiments on boys at Tulane University, proven to be linked to MK Ultra at the time. And then, according to a secret order, right? This investigation into Ferry molesting boys from his Civil Air Patrol squadron. Apparently, at least one of the individuals that was hypnotized while serving in the cap as an underage boy was hypnotized by Ferry. And essentially, the implication is that David Ferry was hypnotizing the boys in the Civil Air Patrol, and Lee Harvey Oswald happened to be one of those boys, and that he was sexually assaulted and molested by David Ferry while he was
Jesus.
hypnotized in the cap while he was underage. And this is how you would obviously create, it would help with, and there was like radical gay conversion therapy that was being I thought it was so funny what was happening there, because all of these guys are strangely homosexual. I don't know exactly to what extent it was really a power play. I'm not quite certain, but I definitely think that knowing that he was hypnotizing boys in the Civil Air Patrol, and then as far as Cuban exiles such as Sergio Aracha, I don't know how to pronounce it, but they were intimidating witnesses. And some of the boys claimed that Ferry took them to Cuba on unspecified missions. And so he's just like hypnotizing, sexually assaulting, and then taking the kids to Cuba, which they're running essentially they're running covert operations at the time, many of which are targeting Castro for assassination, right? Which again, it's like, my God, dude. But yeah, my final point on just Michael Aquino, then we'll get out of here, is just that basically John DeCamp claims that, and again, he's a former Nebraska senator. He wrote a book on the Franklin scandal, right? Called I think it was called The Franklin Case. I can't remember what it was called, but either way, it's a great book, and he becomes the person who sort of brought out the story of these victim witnesses, many of which one of which was Paul Benassi, another Alicia Owen. She's that's an insane story in itself, but Benassi claims that he and other child victims, they gave this prominent evidence in very great detail on the role of Michael Aquino, and basically they alleged that he obviously was he's a convicted pedophile, right? And it's very insane that he had such an active role in the military and was a leader of the Army Psychological Warfare Unit, which drew on his expertise, according to John DeCamp, and personal practices in brainwashing, Satanism, Nazism, homosexual pedophilia, and murder. And so Paul Benassi reported that monarch-related activities often involved his commander at Offutt Air Force Base, Bill Clemens, and Lieutenant Colonel Michael Aquino. So they would travel to Dresden in communist East Germany, where weapons were inspected. This was one of the ways. So there, and in the Federal Republic of Germany, the monarch personnel were frequently neo-Nazis. This milieu is a special project of Lieutenant Colonel Aquino, who was a West European advisor to the U.S. Chiefs of Staff. Paul Benassi has extensive experience in the Aryan Nation and other white supremacist cults. So the Franklin cover-up, that was it. DeCamp explains that the Monarch Project, in some circles, was the unofficial name of an extreme mind control network. And essentially, he claims that the basic idea was to use the alters of people suffering from dissociative identity disorder for specific military and intelligence purposes. The alternative personalities are only formed at a relatively young age and only under the most extreme stress. So most people wouldn't even think of obviously conducting such, sadistic research. But what DeCamp explains is that essentially through paperclip, these Nazi scientists and these individual like sociopathic scientists were conducting these experiments on children and laid the foundation for this research in some of the concentration camps. And so the origin of Monarch is described, the Monarch Project, as being compiled by those who had been debriefing multiple personality disorder, DID child victims, Nazi experimentation in World War II concentration camps were said to have gone beyond simply insane physical tortures. They brainwashed people for military and strategic purposes. After the war, Alan Dulles and other Western intelligence people brought Nazi doctors out for use in the U.S. A teenage concentration camp inmate named Greenbaum, who had participated to save himself, also came to the U.S., known later as Dr. Green. So he becomes a high-level brainwasher and is widely represented in these MK Ultra programs with what DeCamp describes as a distinctive Kabbalistic magic theme, which draws in the occult, obviously.
Yeah.
So he says the killers in the Nazi camps were themselves trained and organized by psychiatrists and eugenicists operating from the T4 Bureau. These psychiatrists had long been the pets of white supremacist British and American financier networks. At least some of these Nazi doctors were spirited out of Germany under the supervision of and for Bank of England Governor Montague Norman and Tavistock Institute Director John Rees on behalf of the British government and the U.S. Allies as well. And so Norman, personally an insane theosophist who had been chief of the pre-war pro-Nazi faction within England, and Rees organized post-war propaganda and continued psychological warfare activities, creating Orwellian groupings within U.S. psychiatry and mental health fields. So yeah, I think that's accurate as hell in terms of the sort of monarch mind control, organized,
The influence, how much it's like in shit. Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely. I think it provides us with the perfect window as to how it was kind of devised at the time. And again, at some point, at least the next time we have a conversation, we should I think just drill down a little bit further, because I recently found specifically, legitimate evidence that
Why
proves
don't
that.
we? Sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, you're good. That it just proves that there were. I mean, you have individual like deputy directors of the CIA coming out and making statements about a pedophile academy and having a legitimate domestic black site where they call it the farm, and they train pedophiles, and they also take children to some of these black sites in the deep woods, and they'll essentially train them on how to sexually pleasure individual adults, and then also how to lure and provoke information and pull information from the adult that they're sexually pleasuring. And so again, it's like these measures and methods have been overall, I think, strategically pursued at a level that is incomprehensible, that most people couldn't conceptualize and wouldn't want to.
Then let's well, first off, we'll invest in wood chippers, and then we'll put a lot of money in wood chippers. But no, legit, I'll hit you up after this, and we'll plan another day to do Operation Monarch specifically. I think in a week or two or so, we'll do an Operation Monarch, get our shit together, and talk about that. That's gonna be fucking crazy. Yeah. I can't wait to never be the same ever again, Austin.
It's dark, man. It really is.
Yeah. All right. This was awesome. Guys, check out Austin Underclass Podcast. Does Already Dead with Jose from No Way Jose. You got anything? Oh, you do the pod with Sam. You got a bunch of shit, dude. Let them know.
Man, yeah, we do a paywalled show. You can find it on the Patreon. I know if you support any of our premium content, basically myself, Brad Bankley, or Sam, then you can access the premium content, which involves whatever this is, which is the show that the title of our show, which is hilarious because of course, like, the schizo bro is a symbol, right? And we never know quite where the conversation will go. Yeah. And that was another. Dude, I had such a sort of, my intention today was to legitimately talk about the mass shooting aspect of all of this that just occurred with the Minneapolis case and everything else, because again, it's like this dude's like, one, his dad obviously glows, but two, I just found out his uncle is a long-standing GOP lawmaker who was a Republican, a lawmaker in Kentucky. And essentially, like, until 2003, and was a part of like driving forward legislation for pro-trans gender affirming care. And so he had spent the majority of his political career essentially fighting for trans rights as a conservative Republican in Kentucky.
Interesting.
Doesn't that add up?
That's
Right?
fascinating.
Anyway, it's just that there's so much to it. But anyway, that
Well,
was
hey,
my
if,
goal. And of course, I came in and I didn't talk about any of
well,
that.
I guess we got 2 episodes we're gonna do then. No, for real, dude. I'll hit you up if I
Oh, yeah.
know. I think we got a good. Not saying we're gonna like start another fucking podcast because I already have 97 of them. But
Right.
I'm down to do these interviews because I think like we got a good back and forth. I don't know anything about this, and you got all the info, and I think it's a good.
Love to,
We
man.
can like we create a good pathway to like fucking dig into this shit. So yeah, let's do some more of these. This was fucking awesome, man.
I would love to, brother. I'm in. And yeah, but everybody just follow the Underclass podcast. And if anything
Yeah.
I've ever done resonates with you, and you have the financial means, of course, I'm forever grateful if you can support me. And the Patreon is definitely the best place for that. But yeah, beyond that, man, I love you, Andy. Thank you for having me on. Honestly, you're my brother. I can't
Yeah,
thank
man.
you enough. I appreciate these conversations, and you're just one of the real ones, man. Like, I just honestly, you are, and we need more of that, right? People who are just willing to have these conversations, no matter how, you know, extraordinary some of these allegations come off at face value. It's
Yeah.
like I truly do believe that I'm not trying to present anything that I don't think where there's smoke, there's no fire, right? It's
Well,
like I'm legitimately I'm trying to present things that have overall convinced me,
and that's why,
the
yeah,
alternative.
that's why I like talking to you the most because I was like, I noticed from the get go, I was like, Austin's got like none of that extra. The one thing I was always shocked in the whatever it is, conspiracy, parapolitics, schizo community. I was shocked at how much ego there is. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? How much?
absolutely.
It's so many people want. You know what it is? So many people want to be the person that saves humanity, and it's like I'm just curious about this shit, and I've noticed you probably have the best due diligence of anyone. So that's why I really like
Thank you,
checking
man.
out your stuff.
That
'Cause
was
that's
really my intention, was to hopefully bridge the gap between conspiracy and credibility, because I find it to where, like, one, people, the ego comes into play with, like, I own this information. This is, it's like, what are you doing?
yeah.
This is public information, and it should be presented in a way to where it's like I'm only trying to spread this knowledge as much as I possibly can. You
Yeah,
know,
dude, that's what I noticed when that's why I noticed when Ian Carroll got popular. And I'll keep it a buck. I literally DM'd you to be like, "Is this guy seem weird to you?" Cuz
right?
I will say his rise seems inorganic, and then his whole like he'll like, yeah, in 2020 I was just a fucking gay ass liberal and now I know everything about this. But at the same time there were a bunch of people I remember being like, well, I've been talking about this forever. And I go, yeah. And then he did and was way better at it than you. So
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know what the fuck to tell you. I
For
don't know.
sure.
I don't think he's a Fed. I think he has a team he doesn't tell anyone about.
One thing I will say is that the only thing that gives me pause and raises, like, my eyebrows is when you have now it could be a factor of him just being so new to all of this information. And so
Yes.
therefore you've yet to come to a more, I think, now it would come off as a black pilled conclusion, but it's not. I think it's just kind of like realistically interpreting the power structure. But at
Yeah.
the same time, it's like I don't like false hope, where I'm not ever attempting to feed a black pill to anyone. I think that there's beauty and just in terms of individual sovereignty, there's beauty in life, man. Like, surround yourself with, one, you should attempt to exercise your own principles and ethical values as often as possible on a daily basis, and surround yourself with people who agree with those things. Not to obviously you should still be willing to have relationships with people who disagree with you, but at the same time, I mean, it's like, what are their intentions? Because that's what I rely
Yeah.
on more than anything. Do you have good intentions, and are you just sort of, have you been deceived, and and
Yeah.
and you think you're ethically in the right place, and you're pursuing the right thing morally, and you do have my best interest at heart. You just have no idea what you're talking about because you've been so well conditioned.
Yeah.
But so I'm hoping that's it. And that's usually what I try to do as far as like some of the conclusions being much more like, you know, how can you have access to all this information, but still have such a milk toast conclusion and believe in the institution,
Yeah.
right?
But then also too, he just might be bad at the dismount. Like, and that's
Could be naive to that at this moment, and he has a chance to grow in the future. I'm not
bro,
saying he can't change his
there
mind.
there's like so many YouTube channels I watch that are like ultra left leaning because they're just better at the explainer videos.
Yeah.
And all those videos, like all those people they're super good at information gathering. There's
Mhm.
just certain people, there's just certain people that like the dismount. They're not like, dude, best example, Michael Schellenberger. I love his shit. I got his book, San Francisco.
Mhm.
He spends the whole book outlining why the government is directly the problem with the homeless problem. The entire and then like the last couple pages, he's like, so here's what the government needs to do. You're just like,
That's so funny.
well, hey man, if 99% of the book was fucking amazing, I'm not gonna
Yeah.
be mad because he just stumbled on the dismount. Like,
Right.
and also too, I was watching Ian Carroll on Rogan, and he throws out there that he's like a ultra marathon runner. And that's the
Mhm.
thing, people don't realize those people are psychopaths when it comes to getting shit done. So
Right.
like he also just might be a fucking psycho who's really good at, like, I've seen him post videos about like, he'll be like, so when I'm reading a book, and then he turns the camera and he just has like a whole note board, and I go, yeah, he just might be more efficient because he's a fucking marathon running psychopath. Like, I
Right.
don't, but yeah, my only thing is always just like, the only thing that is still weird is I go, he's vague about his origin story, but I look
Right.
at that, then I look at the stuff he's doing. I go, yeah, how does this help? It's like, we brought up Sean Ryan earlier. Sean Ryan
Mhm.
talks about all the good shit, but then his solutions are like fucking Dick Cheney solutions. So you're
Yeah.
like,
But the
okay,
CIA will still come in and save us. It's like
yeah, and it's just like,
Yeah.
well, what about? I look at it this way. I go, what about Ian Carroll benefits the establishment? And I go,
Right.
I don't feel like anything does.
The
But
only thing that I could think is controlling the narrative, right?
and
So it's like if you need a strategic asset in place to
fair,
one,
yeah.
it would be controlling the narrative and the concept of the solution, I think, is where they typically would need that, but
And on top of that is, so like you're well aware, like back in the 60s, they just, oh, here's a problem, let's fucking murder him.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Because like all that shit, but like you can't do that anymore.
Right.
You can't take care of problems like that the same way. So I've been noticing is like the new thing I can tell they're trying to do is information overload. And I
Yeah.
will say, while Ian Carroll is very thorough, you watch his videos and your head hurts with how much he's like
Mhm.
adding to it. So it's like, if he is, if he is like a Fed or whatever the fuck you want to call him, like
Controlled opposition of
yeah,
some kind. Yeah.
I could see, like, the only other angle I could see is like maybe he's just trying to add more muddy the waters more, add way too much, like it's like what they do with a lot of the alien shit. Not that I don't think that there's probably aliens and shit, but if you look, I think a lot of the alien shit is put out there so productive people can waste their time on that.
Oh, yeah.
And so
Absolutely.
I think there's a lot of controlled opposition that are just trying to get productive people wasting their time.
Oh,
And so
absolutely.
that would be the only other angle. But I have to piss more than I've ever had to piss in my whole life. And
Alright.
this was the best 2 hours and 21 minutes of my life. So let's end it there before anything bad happens.
Sounds good,
Austin,
brother.
you're the fucking man. Have a great day. Everyone else, go check out Underclass Pod and all of Austin's shit, or else. Anyway, that's not actually a threat if the government's watching. All right. Have a good one, guys. Be about it. Peace.